Hello, hello. Welcome to the Jellyfish Journals. My name is Susie, and we're going to jump right into my November reading update. So the first thing I do every month when I'm updating my reading log is I go into my STORYGRAPH app and I review all of the books that I've read for that month. So if you click on the little graph at the bottom, you can choose which month. And then if you scroll down just a little bit where it says read, you can click on the actual books that you've read. So I've already reviewed most of these books. I just finished What Mother Won't Tell Me pretty late last night, but it was still November, so it counts. And you click on the book to leave a review. And I struggle with this part every time I review a book. I decided this book was adventurous and mysterious. Not totally sure I ever feel really good about those choices. It was a pretty fast-paced book. It was plot and character-driven. I didn't feel like there was strong character development. Didn't love the characters. They weren't very diverse. The flaws weren't a main focus of the book. So overall, I gave it about 4 stars. I clicked the save button, and then if you just go back with the little back arrow, you'll see it's loading, and there's my review. So that's pretty much my first step anytime I go to update my reading log. And now we're going to jump right into the journals, and you'll see my current reading journal goes across both of my Jellyfish journals, which is a little bit of a nuisance and why I ultimately decided to have a dedicated reading log or reading journal for 2025. So I did make little tabby notes on the side so I won't have to spend too much of this video flipping back and forth looking for the pages. And I tried to tab them in the order I normally do things. So this is actually my second Jellyfish journal, but you'll see it is where I have to start now because pages in the first journal were filled up. So my first stop is to log any new books that I have gotten during the month. Normally I do this kind of as I go because then I shelve them once I emboss them and make sure they're a part of my library. But this time yesterday morning before I filmed this, I had gone out and done a little book shopping with my friend Alyssa. And so I had a few I had to add. And I'm laughing because so many of these start with the word the, which is pretty funny. So once I've got those written down in there, oh yeah, and the Poisonwood Bible was a recommendation some of you had for a book that takes place in Africa. So I went ahead and got that this morning. My next step is to go to my reading log, which is a few pages back. This is actually my third spread like this in both of my Jellyfish journals. I have read a bit more this year than I originally anticipated, which is awesome. And yes, it is bugging me a little bit that my numbers are drifting over to the right. It's something I'm always telling my third graders not to do. I always tell them, watch your margins, don't drift too far. But then now I'm guilty. So I go through and I look at the STORYGRAPH app and I just kind of mark the star rating I gave it in the STORYGRAPH app. And not a perfect science. It's just to give me a rough idea of how I felt about the book. And you'll see I leave What Mother Won't Tell Me alone because at the time of filming, I only had a few chapters left. Back to the first Jellyfish journal. We pop right into my A to Z challenge. I read Yellowface and I struggled with a book set in a holiday, but then I remembered that Daisy Darker actually takes place over Halloween. So I thought that was not what I was expecting. I thought a book would take place over Christmas probably, but it was kind of cool to finally finish that and cross that off. On to my book bracket for 2024. My clear winner this month was The Butterfly Garden. I'll talk about that again in a minute. But my next stop is back in the second Jellyfish journal. You can see how crazy this is getting. And I did only read out of the 12 books this month, only 2 of them were new states on the map. One took place in Iowa and one took place in Louisiana. So I went ahead and logged those and colored those in. and then on to my bookshelfie, which is one of my very, very favorite spreads to fill out every month. I just love this. So I kind of go through and I just add a color. That one I accidentally darkened out a little bit too much. I grabbed the wrong gray, but I pre-chose colors that I thought would look nice with the stickers I'd already put on the page. You can see all the titles are already on the books. That's because those are currently the oldest books on my shelf. And so I tried to just kind of knock out the books that have been sitting there the longest before I read newer books that I've purchased. But I went ahead and colored all those in. And then I realized that the Butterfly Garden was actually not on that bookshelf. It was a more recent purchase. So I'm looking through a couple of my lists of other more recent purchases. It's so embarrassing, but I'm also loving my list. And it wasn't on that list. So now you can see me digging and digging through this journal, trying to find my other new book log, which is also filled out. There it is. And there is the Butterfly Garden. I only read it ahead of schedule because I had multiple people recommend it. So that concludes the spreads in that journal. And now we get to go on to my other favorite spread, which I know I'm going to be looking forward to in my new reading journal for 2025. And that is just where I put down the books that I read throughout the month and decorate the page a little bit. So I've talked about the sticker book that I purchased at Hobby Lobby. And it was I guess a seasonal floral sticker book. I don't know. I will say it pretty much fell apart instantly. So I don't have the outside of it any longer. But it kind of had, I don't even know if it was a seasonal floral book. It just happened to have 12 different types of florals. So I assigned a different floral to each month just so that all of the months for my reading journal will be, or for these pages, will be floral. So they kind of go together, but not necessarily identical. And here you'll see me, I'm trying to spread out my book covers just a little bit. Next to them, I usually write a little A, P, or D if it was audio, print, or digital. I totally forgot to do that, so you will not see me do that in this video. I have to go back and do that. But I do glue down the books in the order that I read them. Probably doesn't really matter, but I figure if I know the order I read them, then why not just glue them down in that order? And the other thing I try to do with this is I just try to mix up how I lay out the books. So you might have noticed I flipped back through the pages a moment ago. Sometimes I'll lay the books down in a diagonal across the page. Sometimes they're all at the bottom or at the top. And I hadn't done a spread where the month was at the top and the books were all along the left. So I thought, let's do that. As far as how I title each of the months, I just go into Google, I type the name of the month, and I search up images. And sometimes you get a bunch right away. Sometimes you have to dig a little deeper and click one of their suggestions at the top of the list where it will say clip art or month name or something along those lines. And I just try to find something that looks a little different from the past few months, or if I'm lucky, I find something I haven't done at all. I always enjoy lettering. I am not as smooth at it as a lot of other journalists are, but my method works for me. As my dad would say, I always do things the hard way. So I probably could invest a lot of time in practicing a steady hand and practicing different font types and things. I know there's workbooks out there, but I just do things my way, which is usually roughing it out. So I'll keep tweaking things. Pardon me. So at the bottom of each of these pages, you'll see on the right, there's like a little pre-printed jellyfish. And I love the little jellyfish, but obviously I wouldn't want it to show on every single page. So I have a paint marker, just a generic paint marker I purchased at Hobby Lobby, and I use that to whiten out the jellyfish at the bottom. It doesn't cover them completely, but it lightens them enough that whatever I put over the top, it doesn't show through. And then for some reason, I decided to be really ambitious. With the other months, I've just kind of slapped down the washi in a straight line somewhere and let it alone. But I don't know why I decided I was going to get a little craftier with the washi this time. So what I did was I just kind of traced around each letter, and now I'm lifting up the tops with the X-Acto knife because I have a tendency to pull up the wrong washi. Like I'll pull up the washi I meant to leave on the page. So this was kind of my way of double checking myself, and I lift them just the tiniest bit to make sure before I just yank it off the page, which is typical Susie to just go ahead and yank stuff off without giving it much thought. And then I just purchased these really cool tweezers. I had a very hard time finding them in stores. And when I was at my parents' at Thanksgiving, I asked my mom if she knew what they were actually called, and she, of course, already happened to own some. So I went on Amazon and I found them. They both are the kind where when you squeeze it, it opens, so they stay closed. And they're really pretty. They're kind of iridescent looking, and I'll link them down in the description box below. But it did come with a set of two. I think it was $7, and since I have little chubby fingers and my hands aren't as steady as they used to be, it's probably a good idea. I did have a couple of people comment and recommend that I get some, and so I'm still trying to learn how to use them. They're not super natural if you haven't been doing them forever. I give up a lot, but I am trying, and I think once I get a little better at it, I'll be grateful for them. The best part, of course, of any spread is decorating and adding those stickers. So I am sorry at the bottom I didn't shove the notebook up high enough to be on camera, but you will see what I decided to put at the bottom there in just a moment. I definitely don't want to overdo it, but I want the page to feel as floral as the other pages do. It does get a little trickier when some months I read a little bit more than other months. I guess what I mean is that if I don't read as much that month, I have a lot more room to decorate. And if I read a little bit more, it is trickier to figure out how to squeeze it all in there. I pretty much try to stick to the florals throughout this reading log and these types of spreads, so I won't use that gather log. I really didn't want too many pumpkins. And I really love that little picture with the weed in it, but it wasn't meant to be. So there you go. You can see I added some mushrooms at the bottom, and that's pretty much it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.